Hello friends, this is Ralph and welcome back to the channel where you learn everything about the ARP 2600 and the Behringer 2600. In today's video, I'm showing you how to patch a Vangelis-like glissando effect sound with the Behringer 2600 and the Arturia KeyStep, so stay tuned. I guess most of you know the original 1982 Blade Runner movie and its powerful soundtrack, which was composed by Vangelis. On many of the lead synthesizer sounds, he used the descending glissando effect, which he achieved with the ribbon controller of the Yamaha CS80. In this tutorial, I'm showing you how to patch a similar falling pitch sound using the mod strip of the Arturia KeyStep and the voltage processor of the Behringer 2600. In my video, I'm using the first version of the Arturia KeyStep, but this principle also works with the newer Arturia KeyStep Pro, KeyStep 37 and KeyStep MK2. So without further ado, let's jump over to the Behringer 2600 and the Arturia KeyStep. Alright friends, so we are looking here at the Behringer 2600 Grey Mini, and here we have the Arturia KeyStep. Alright, I have connected the Arturia KeyStep to the Behringer 2600 via MIDI. And when you connect your KeyStep or keyboard controller to the Behringer 2600, please make sure that you set the correct MIDI channel number on both the Arturia KeyStep and the Grey Mini. So just let me tell you what we are going to patch. So we want to go for this Vangelis glissando effect, a descending glissando effect. And for that, we are going to use the mod strip here of the Arturia KeyStep. On the Behringer 2600, we have 3 oscillators. I want one oscillator to stay at the same octave. Then I want another oscillator to go down by 1 octave. And the third oscillator to go down by 2 octaves. And for that, we are going to use the voltage processor. If you are not familiar with the voltage processor, then please make sure you check out my tutorial about it. I put the link to the tutorial into the video description below. So the first thing you want to do is that you connect your Arturia KeyStep to the MIDI Control Center app, and then you set the mod CV source to mod wheel and the mod CV max voltage to 5 volt. You can go as high as 12 volt, but since the modulation strip here on the Arturia KeyStep is rather short, it makes sense to go with a lower voltage, and the minimum voltage you can set here for the mod strip is 5 volt. Alright, so then here on the rear of the Arturia KeyStep, we have here the mod output. And we plug a cable into the mod output slot. So, and then we take the cable with the mod output signal and plug it here into the multiplier row, mult row, because we are going to duplicate the signal of the mod output. Okay. Then here on the oscillators, you have seen that I have used the pulse wave output of oscillator number 3, and I plugged it here into the VCO number 3 slot because I want to override the internal wiring, which is sawtooth. I want to go with the pulse waveform on oscillator number 3. Why I'm doing that, you will learn later. Now, let me show you what is happening to an oscillator when we just use the normal output, the 5-volt output of the modulation strip. So we just take oscillator number 3 here. I plug a cable here into the multi-row, and now I plug it here into oscillator number 3, into the noise generator slot. I press a key on the keyboard, I raise the slider, and now let's see what's happening when I use the modulation strip. You can hear that the pitch is rising. But actually, we want to do the opposite. We want to go down. We want a descending glissando effect. And for that, we are going to use the voltage processor. So now, what we are going to do, we take here oscillator number 1 first, which stays the same, at the same octave. And this is actually controlled via MIDI. So I have here oscillator number 1. There will not be a glissando effect on this oscillator. So now we move on to oscillator number 2. We take here now the slot of the multiplier row, which carries the signal of the mod strip output, and plug it here into the keyboard CV input now of the voltage processor. Then we take another cable and we take the inverted signal and plug it here into the sample and hold out slot of oscillator number 2 and raise the slider to the top. So I have 2 oscillators playing right now. It's oscillator number 1 and oscillator number 2. And now listen what happens if I use the mod strip. Okay. I have adjusted the slider in a position that it goes down roughly an octave. You have to use your ear. This is an analog instrument. It's not 100%. So your slider position might be slightly different from my slider position. You can also here adjust this slider. I have raised it to the top, and here roughly this slider position is when I go down an octave. Around here you see my finger, it's 1 octave down. So now we do the same with oscillator number 3, but we go down 2 octaves. So I take here another cable. We plug it here into the multiplier row, which carries the mod strip output signal, and plug it here into this slot, which is marked plus 10 voltage. Plug it in. And then we take the inverted signal, plug it into this slot, plug it into the noise generator input slot, and let me get this out of the way. So, and raise the slider to the top. And you can see here the position of the slider is different to this position. This is going down 1 octave, and this is going down 2 octaves. So let me bring up oscillator number 3 and oscillator number 1. And now listen what happens when I use the modulation strip. So oscillator number 3 is going down 2 octaves. So, and now listen what happens when I bring in all 3 oscillators here. So, and now I'm going to use the modulation strip. Okay, you can hear oscillator number 1 holds the pitch, oscillator number 2 is going down by 1 octave, and oscillator number 3 is going down by 2 octaves. And now the opposite. Let's bring in the reverb of the Behringer 2600. You know, since the modulation strip is very short, it's very difficult to find the right position to get the exact pitch 1 octave down and 2 octaves down. For instance, Vangelis was using a ribbon controller on the Yamaha CS80, which was rather long, and therefore he had much more control over the pitch. With this very short modulation strip, it's a little bit difficult to achieve it, to have that much control over it. But anyway, that's a decent workaround to get something similar. Okay, so I have here now the Behringer 2600 reverb. And now I bring in an external delay and an external reverb. So, and now I want to show you how we can make this sound a little bit more powerful. And for that, we are going to use the pulse width modulation on oscillator number 2 and oscillator number 3. That's the reason why I'm outputting the pulse wave waveform of oscillator number 3. So for this, we are going to use the LFO here. We take this sine wave output, and you can see that I'm using here a multiplier because we need the LFO output for oscillator number 3 and oscillator number 2. So we plug one cable here into the pulse width modulation slot of oscillator number 2. So listen what's happening. This is just oscillator number 2. And I increase the speed of the LFO a little bit. And you can hear how the pulse width is being modulated. So we bring up here oscillator number 3 and plug this cable into the pulse width modulation slot and bring up the slider so you can hear the pulse width modulation. And now I bring up all 3 oscillators. So let me get this out of the way. Okay, now we are playing all 3 oscillators. We bring in some reverb from the 2600 synthesizer. Bring in a little bit of portamento. And use the modulation strip. And now we add some external delay and external reverb. Okay friends, please bear in mind that you can adjust the slider positions of the voltage processor and the FM control inputs of the VCOs according to your preferences and liking. Just start experimenting and find your own individual sound and effect. For instance, you can also make one oscillator glide up by 1 octave, while another oscillator goes down by 1 or 2 octaves. Once again, I want to draw your attention to my tutorial about the voltage processor if you need further information about this module. The link is provided in the video description below. I hope you got some value out of this tutorial. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't done so yet. Your support is always appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again in my next video. Until then, take care, stay safe, and peace.